Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. But we're really going heavy on headlines today. It's the latest edition of Headlines and Basslines, in which we run down some of the latest stories in the New Haven Independent and reflect on them a little bit, and then intersperse them with songs by local artists and locally adjacent artists, including, we've done this a couple times lately because her career's taken off, Kristen Ford, who we watched her career in New Haven take off over the years, a really inventive singer, songwriter, rhythmic musician at places like Cafe 9 and Stella Blues. And she now has teamed up with Ani DeFranco, who's producing her music and touring nationally and hitting a big market. But first, before we get to her music, we're going to talk about a breaking headline. This just in from the New Haven Independent, posted 11:57 a.m. Bank to nightclub plan wins final okay. We're talking about the vault, folks. You might not know what the vault is, but when you see it, you'll know why it's going to be called the vault. There's an old, at 45 Church Street, that's right by Crown, downtown. There was an old bank building. It was most recently Connecticut Savings Bank, but Savings Bank hasn't even been in business for decades. And it's this old kind of dramatic Gothic-looking building. I guess it's a marble column building that was one of those grand kind of banks that looked like temples back in the old days. It's been vacant for a long time. Oh, I see. It's a classical revival building, whatever that means. And but it has those big marble columns, and it looks so grand. It's been empty forever. And it was bought by a guy named David Kupferberg, who's doing some downtown redevelopment. And we didn't know what to go in there. And the city plan actually shot him down on the most ridiculous reasoning. That's my 2 cents there. He wanted to put a marijuana dispensary there. And they said that's not good for the neighborhood. Well, you already got, maybe that's why they did it. You already got all these people who are kind of strung out on heroin and fentanyl who gather there on that very block. And the Rite Aid where they buy Listerine. I mean, that's kind of a sad story. And but it's also other clubs in that area. So when they got shot down for a marijuana dispensary, it's right across from Gotham City, for instance, they did get approval to make it a nightclub. So it's going to be a nightclub called The Vault, which is very well named. It's going to be kind of interesting if you're really into nihilism and self-abuse. Probably going to be great confines in that vault. And but I think it's great to make it a club. Some people say, well, they don't like Crown Street has all those tons of young people coming and just getting really drunk and acting wild every weekend. And I'm not going to weigh in on that, except to say that I'm probably not going to go there. I'm probably going to go 2 blocks away to Cafe 9 or some other places where people my age go. But I think it is great to have places for younger people to go as well, who like to go to rave type music till 1 or 2 in the morning. But anyways, the headline, as I said, is Bank to Nightclub Plan wins final okay. The grand former bank building at Church and Crown is now going to be a nightclub. And we wish all businesses do well. Well, I promised you some Kristen Ford music. And I'm not going to start with her new single. I'm going to start with the previous album, War in the Living Room. And this song is dedicated to some of the people who might be going to the vault on Crown Street when it's opened. It's called Broke, Stoned, and 23.
You are a storm cloud full of salty water, and even in the darkness I was not to falter. I don't think of you as the enemy. I only wish that I was broke, stoned, and 23. Not trying to hurt nobody, holding all the best intentions. Are we done for, baby? Oh, do we have a bundle of nerve endings. Can I help it if I like the beginning? again. We are done for, baby. But oh, do we have a good thing? When you were drowning, I kept my hands in my pockets. I kept my feet real dry. Head underwater, you can count on me to change the subject. Maybe someday if ever you align. I wish that I was broke and stoned and 23. I wish that I was all alone with nobody. You are a storm cloud full of salty water, and even in the darkness I was not to falter. The earth is spinning around effortlessly. How I wish that I was broke, stoned, and 23.
Broken Stone and 23 from Kristen Ford over off her 2021 release called War in the Living Room. You're listening to Headlines and Basslines at WNHH-FM 103.5. Live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. We're going over the latest local headlines from the New Haven Independent, a little commentary and a little music in between from local artists like Grits King. Saving Time, which is what we're hearing in the background. He's a local jazz musician, does original compositions. One of the stories this week that people read, one of our top read stories, was about the death of Andrea Jackson Brooks. Andrea dedicated her adult life to public service in the best way. She was an alder from before when they were called alder, when they were alder women. For 15 years in Ward 4 in the Hills, she was state rep. She was the top aide to former Mayor John DeStefano, worked for the state comptroller, and did something that I always admire people for because I could never do it. She sat through long, endless community meetings all the time, not just as an alder. And we need people to do that, by the way, who have more patience than people like me. But she chaired the Hill Health Board. She was on the management team. She was everywhere. So when people, paid her tribute, she died. She was either 79 or 81. Her family said 79. The public record said 81. And that's actually relevant because sometimes there was a little controversy in Andrea's life. Nothing that reflects badly to her, in my opinion. But the truth is, when she died, I was one who argued not to, hold on a second. When she died, I was one who argued not to play up the most controversial moment in her life that maybe had the most impact on the city. And I think that's because when people die who dedicate their lives to public service, I don't like to focus on the mistakes they made over the end, but I think I'm kind of wrong about that because I think that how Andrea Jackson Brooks dealt with her error was important and even inspiring, and makes me think of other people in public life, like the alder on the East Shore who recently smashed into a constituent's car and then hid about it, didn't immediately report it, never took responsibility, and I think it's important that we all do make mistakes. And the measure of a person's life is not that they made mistakes, but how they dealt with their toughest times. So let me roll it back a little bit. So Andrea Jackson Brooks, always worked at the grassroots, cared about people in the Hill, never left the neighborhood, sat, as I said, through those long, endless meetings to make decisions with her neighbors. And she worked her way up. She was a state representative. And then she became the top aide to the mayor of New Haven, John DeStefano. And she did that for a few years. And she dealt well with all people, all different kinds of life. She never forgot who she was, and she was able to negotiate and deal, always very businesslike. And then she became the face of a scandal that almost ended the career of John DeStefano, brought the FBI to shut down City Hall, take all the computers away. A lot of people were fired, including Andrea. What it was the city had a program of federal money that gave you loans, which weren't really loans. They were forgiven. You get the money, you don't have to pay it back, to remediate lead paint. We had a problem with lead paint in our houses. And it turned out that Andrea, who was in charge of the government really day to day, in charge of the people who made those decisions, got a loan herself to fix up lead paint that she didn't have to pay back. So it was basically free money from the government that she was administering. So this was a real conflict of interest. And there was a second part of this that federal money was involved. So they actually aren't allowed to use it for that reason. And so that's why it opened the door when this was reported in the New Haven Advocate. It opened the door to a bigger problem, which was how the DeSefro administration in its early years was doing business, which is basically steering government money and advantages to people on the inside with whom they're doing business to maintain their place of power, whether it was giving no bid, totally unneeded contracts to people, then raised money for the mayor's election campaign, to forcing people really who worked for the city or got contracts to give money to the re-election campaign. Or in this case, when it turned out Andrea got that loan, it turned out she wasn't the only one. Most of the money for that program, which was technically available to the public, but you kind of had to know people on the inside to get it, it was going to elected officials and government officials. I mean, it was so bizarre that Livable City Initiative, LCI, was the agency that administered the loans. The director of that agency wrote himself a letter, and he's also a good guy. People didn't realize this stuff wasn't okay in the 90s. You got to trust me on this. Times have changed. He wrote himself a letter addressed to himself from himself saying, congratulations, here's a loan from LCI. I'm not making this up. And the head of the Board of Alders family got it. Not the head of the Board of Alders, one of the top Alders who later became the head of the Board of Alders. State representatives, other Alders. I mean, it was deep. And it was part of a larger culture that wasn't just this loan program. That's why the FBI never ended up arresting anyone. They, it was highly unethical behavior, and this was illegal what they're doing. But there wasn't the idea that it was that kind of level of graft that was then going on in 3 other Connecticut cities. You had the mayor of Bridgeport, Joe Ganim, Mayor of Hartford, Eddie Perez, who were on their way to prison because they were the mayors were personally taking money for giving away city business. And then, of course, you had the mayor at the same time, the FBI was investigating all these people. The mayor of Waterbury, Phil Giordano, not only was taking money from the mob and giving out stuff that actually was happening in New Haven too, but the FBI had to stop that investigation of his corruption because at the same time, I'm not making this up, folks, he was paying a crack addict, a crack addicted woman, to bring in her 6-year-old twin daughters into City Hall to have sex with the mayor in his office in return for crack. The mayor was giving her crack. I'm not making this up. The FBI caught this on a wire while they were investigating the corruption and said, we got to shut this down right away. People's lives are at stake. So they said, New Haven, they were doing this kind of stuff the way you always do government. It's highly unethical, but they ended up not arresting anyone because the mayor wasn't taking money, as far as anyone could tell. But Andrea's career, after ascent over years, steady work, was thrown off. Now, a lot of people act the way Sal DiCola did in the Alder in the East Shore when he's found doing something wrong and makes excuses for it, gets nasty to people, will never take accountability for it. Andrea just went back to work. Like, I ran into her often, and I'd written the story that derailed her career. And she was still professional with me. She wasn't happy about it. And the truth is, you know why she took the money? And again, we were in a culture then where people thought this is how you do business in government. I'm really not making this up. You got to trust me. She had apparently taken in a relative's kid, little kid who no one was taking care of. And she was using that money to fix up an old house. Now, the person running government should not be receiving this kind of stuff, especially when that's all who's getting it. But it wasn't like this was some greedy, horrible person trying to get rich off government. She really was a public servant. And she went back to being an alder. She went to work for the state comptroller as an aide. She had relationships that were well earned in government. And she kept showing up. She kept showing up for decades. This was 1998. She kept showing up until near the end of her life. Like a year before she died or something, or 2 years. This was a woman who believed in public service, who was a professional, who didn't think she was more important than the people she was representing or the issues she was talking about. She was an adult. I know that sounds silly and maybe even condescending, but I think in politics today, not just locally, I mean, geez, look at some of the national stuff. Adults, mature people who aren't narcissists and think it's all about them, who believe in public service, I actually think that's a commodity in short supply that we need more of. So, that's my take on Aja Jackson Brooks. A life well lived, not only because of her accomplishments, but because of the steady work she did and the way she dealt with the most embarrassing moment in her life. Aja Jackson Brooks, well done. Next, I'd like to play another song from Kristen Ford's album War in the Living Room called Gray Sky Blue. This is more produced than the way she plays it by herself when she does the looping at Cafe 9, which is kind of my favorite, but here it goes.
Little wine drunk and you're laughing at the party, and just holding out a pretend that you're happy. Took a fish out of water, you're gasping for breath. You try to play it cool, but you die a little death. So what's it worth to you to try to paint a gray sky blue? You were my shelter, you were turning it, and all I want is the breeze upon my skin. Take you to the playa down in Mexico, but that ain't gonna help it, we both already know. We could sell all the furniture and hit the open road, but the lightning in the bottle, yeah, the kind we had before. So what's it worth to you to try to paint a gray sky blue? You are my shelter, you were turning it, and all I want is the breeze upon my skin. I want lightning in a bottle, I want lightning in a bottle, I want lightning in a bottle, I want lightning in a bottle.
That's lightning in a bottle. I want lightning in a bottle. That's Kristen Ford. Oh, let's get in. You're listening to Dateline, New Haven, headlines and datelines. I'm just fighting for control here of the of putting on what music you're going to hear. That's Grits King you're going to hear in Saving Time. The back is headlines and baselines, local news stories, and local music like Grits King in the background here. Another headline in the Independent these days, parking meters. New Haven is buying 1,400 new parking meters and 50 new kiosks with capacities to accept card taps and Apple Pay rather than just inserted credit cards and coins. And one thing I learned in the coverage of the story, Norgay's Flood covered it, was that I don't drive that much, but when I park, it seems like the meter's always broken. And in fact, there's one near our office by the FBI building that the whole block, the kiosk has been broken for more than 3 years. And you always try it, and sometimes it takes your money, and then you don't get the slip. And I know you're supposed to go to another block, go a slip, and then bring it back, but some of us are lazy. That's why we're driving those days in the first place. And I always leave signs on my car like, meter doesn't work, or it took my money. I found out that that's too bad. I got a ticket, and they have a picture. It does work, the system, the parking enforcers, that they have a picture of your car at the exact minute when it showed you didn't pay for it, which was kind of fun to go there and see that. So technology does work when you have to pay fines in New Haven for parking. But it almost never works, all this newfangled stuff. And I don't want to be one of those old people say, oh, it's so terrible newfangled. We get used to it. I can't do the remote parking my wife can with, like, when you pay remotely with your phone. It's a little too hard for me. But I think the kiosk kind of makes sense, and those meters. I like putting my credit card in a meter. I can't figure out why that's so difficult for those things to work. But it went for so many years. Like so many things in New Haven, it's such a poorly managed city. We have a mayor who supposedly, he has no vision or personality or connection to people who live here. But supposedly we're getting this guy who went to school of management who really knows how to run things. Turns out he's a crappy manager and doesn't follow through. So you definitely see that in our parking meters. On the other hand, it's a little unfair to blame him for everything that goes wrong. Although I'd say meters that for more than 3 years don't work, but it still works to get you tickets for it isn't great management, but we'll leave that aside. Hopefully that's a new day. And hopefully, because I do think people should pay for parking. And a lot of us are lazy. We don't like to go into the drive up those big parking garages, and they wait a long time to get out sometimes. And so we whine too much about parking. I actually don't usually drive, so it's not an issue for me. And I love the freedom of that. But I'm glad they're buying the new parking meters. I hope these work for more than a week, unlike last time. Unlike the almost $2 billion we spent on schools, and then they don't work because we don't maintain them. And we point a lot of fingers about it. But I digress. Let's listen to the Midnight Strangers. Teenagers in Westville put out several albums. Now they're in college. The group's on hiatus. But we still got their music you can listen to, like Magic from the Midnight Strangers.
Shrouded past, I see it, but I know it'll last. It goes until I break the spell. I think of all the things I've said. I should have left them in my head. They creep and they crawl back to me. Hey, Mr. Magic Man, won't you lend me a helping hand? Inside your treasure chest, put all my problems to rest. Stars float away. I feel alright. Come back to me. I only hear what I want to hear. I only see what I cannot fear. I said, hey, yeah, it's like magic. Come back when I'm asleep. The wizard man gives me peace. I said, hey, yeah, it's like magic. Come back to me. The devil and his mean brigade tried to ruin my parade and tell me where the grass is greener. But with the wizard at my side, I don't need a place to hide, 'cause one can beat any sword. Hey, magic. Come back to me. They come back when I'm asleep. The wizard man gives me peace. I say, hey, yeah, it's like magic. Come back to me. Come back to me. Come back to me. Come back to me. Come back to me.
Like magic. The Midnight Strangers, Westville's own teen band. They're not teens for much longer, but the music still has that energy and that optimism. And we're spreading that here on Headlines and Basslines, WNHHFM 103.5, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Another story I really enjoyed reading in the Independent this week. I enjoy reading all the stories in the Independent. Tom Breen interviewed Kiana Flores, and you've read about her from time to time over the years in the Independent. She went to Co-op High. She got involved in the Sunrise Movement, I believe, or, one of the climate change movements where the young people were saying, this planet, you got to save it for us. We don't want it destroyed by fossil fuels. And she's been an activist in that. And she grew up in Chatham Square, section of Fairhaven. Her parents were immigrants from Honduras. She got into Yale, and now she's going to be, because no one's running against her, the next alder from Ward 1, which is mostly Yale, downtown, which I think is great. And she's the person, what's interesting is whom she is succeeding. Alex Guzman is also from New Haven, also from an immigrant family from Ecuador, from Fairhaven, also got into Yale as sort of like a first generation ascending into the American dream, we could say, and pushing for a just society. And Ward 1 has always been interesting about whom they send to the Board of Alders, because they're not usually there that long, because you move out of Yale after you're a student, right? You don't usually go your freshman year, although I guess you might be. And so some people then find a way to continue living there a few more years. Michael Moran did it when he was a Yale student. Then he went to the Divinity School, and he stayed on a few more years. But usually you have to be sort of like one of those sports people, remember, who played running back for the Cowboys for the last 40 years. There's a state senator, Martin Looney, who could tell you all that stuff, who got the Heisman Trophy in 1923. Keeping track of Ward 1 alders is a challenge because they keep going in and out. Like Marvin Krisloff, who was the president of Oberlin, he was a Yale and alder, even though he'd been undergraduate, as a law student. Michael Moran, who's still at Yale, was there. Stephen Pryor, who became a top aide to Mayor in Newark and a commissioner in Rhode Island. I forget which part of the government. A lot of really smart, ambitious people come through, and the rap on them is, well, you're a Yalie, and a lot of resentment against Yaleys in town. They tend to be Yale students who care a lot about the city and care a lot about politics and are quite idealistic and end up being forces for good. I can only think of one case that I followed it for 45 years where a Yale alder actually was carrying water for Yale as an alder. Most of the time they don't. Most of the time they're supportive of good decision making. And while you like to have people like Andrew Jackson Brooks, who are in for the long haul, they get experience over time, they make decisions based on deep connections and community. It's not so bad out of 30 alders to have one seat where an energetic young person who's excited to be part of a community adds some more perspective and help to the public service to the mix. So, but what has changed is that the alder usually was a white person, sometimes man, sometimes woman, usually came from privileged background. And now we've had two in a row who grew up here in New Haven from immigrant families. And the irony there, to me, and it's a good irony, is that the Yale ward is providing us representation from what might be the least represented grassroots part of our community, which is our ever-growing immigrant community, often undocumented. I know Alex's family was. So it actually now is the Yale alder who's allowing people most in the need of a voice, someone who understands their experience through lived experience, onto the board. I hate to be upbeat about something about politics, because as I understand from algorithms and media outlets, you're supposed to think everything is terrible every 5 minutes, but I think that's pretty good. Then again, not everything in America is pretty good, as you will hear now from the Blue Jays and their song America Pulse.
the pride. Praying on your knees. Who will stand? Get up and fight.
They don't really care about us, and they ain't getting going when the times get tough, and they ain't trying to shine all the diamonds in the rough. I think it's time to take a stand. Enough is enough. Call they bluff, cause I don't think you really understand. If we come together, we don't have to blame the man. Don't need no 40 acres, just give me the whole land. Diversion is created just to see you from the plan. Goddamn, I'm just trying to spit the knowledge, take notes. How you sink a ship when you're in the same boat? Try to hit a stroke, but we can't stay afloat. Something's out of order, but they swear it ain't broke. That's a joke, cause we ain't even got the same rights. And even if I get it, gotta put up a fight. And I ain't really saying that I got the answer key, cause really all I want is for my people to be free, to be free. The beat of my heart is crying L-O-V-E, cause I want all of my people to be free, to be free. The beat of my heart is crying L-O-V-E, cause I want all of my people to be free, to be free.
America, checking for your pulse. 49 heartbeats, they profited enough. Family, struck down in our month of pride. Praying on your knees. Who will stand? Get up and fight. Get up, act up and fight.
Black, white, brown, multiracial and Asian, but none of us were here until they took it from the natives. Then we turned around and had a nerve to be racist, justify the use of religious discrimination. Now the terror got us in the palm of their hand, but we can't get together to create a counter plan. Violence, silence, rising riots, innocent dying, government lying. Can't get ahead cause we all too consumed with who I sleep with and where I use the restroom. I'm just trying to tell you that I got the antidote. Campaign for love, let peace win the vote. Feel like giving up, but I still got hope. Respecting every person, that will really be dope. You can stand with love or fall from the hate. Let's adopt one label for ourselves, human race.
Oh yes, we should pray for Orlando, like we pray for Sandy Hook, San Bernardino. Or stop going to the movies and stop going to the club. Even kindergartners should be carrying a gun. Stonewall was a riot after prayers were not enough. So won't you stand up? Won't you stand up? America, checking for your pulse.
The beat of my heart is crying L-O-V-E, cause I want all of my people to be free, to be free. The beat of my heart is crying L-O-V-E, cause I want all of my people to be free, to be free. Now what we want, peace, and who is us, we. So just let us be and live in harmony. Now what we want, peace, and who is us, we. So just let us be and live in harmony.
The beating my heart is going L-O-V-E. America Pulse. About the shooting, the massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. The Blue Jays story, America. Man, I think that is a powerful, powerful song. And a cry for humanity, which we hear in the face of all disasters and who lives count. And that makes the humanist argument that all lives count. And talking about that, headlines of Basslines, WNHHFM 103.5. Live streams at newhavenpen.org. You know what? This is something special today. One of the headlines. The governor of Connecticut, Ned Lamont, did something right. Something that wasn't just protecting the interests of the elites that he comes from. Let me explain. So I want to say go Ned, because not many days you can say that. Yale New Haven Hospital wants to buy 3 more hospitals. As you know, the state is getting carved up, Yale New Haven Hospital and Hartford Hospital, the same way it's getting carved up by 2 media companies, Hearst and Current. It's getting carved up. All little hospitals are being bought up. Generally, people are concerned about hospitals getting bigger, not enough competition, owning market share. But others argue the root of the problem is actually our healthcare system, and they can deliver efficiencies. And a lot of these smaller hospitals, I think, like Waterbury, I know definitely like St. Raphael's that was taken over, and Sharon, They would otherwise go out of business as community hospitals because they can't function because the deeper problems with our greed-based, vicious, predatory healthcare system that gives all power to the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies especially to just rip us off for profit, even though they get government protection to serve us terrible rates. And basically have a business model that says get as much money from us as they can to get insurance and then give us back as little as we're entitled to under those rules and make us sicker just trying to get covered by them for the crime of getting ill. So given that, I'm agnostic about whether you allow these hospitals to merge. Sometimes there's no choice. But here's the thing. They're nonprofit, but they are like large corporations, for-profit, in that they own the medical practices. They have these vertical structures where they cut across the different steps you get at healthcare, the rapid care, urgent care centers, the testing centers. So it's not that anyone's doing wrong, but it's not the same thing as like a church or a storefront medical clinic or a neighborhood health center when you're dealing at that level. And they want $80 million from the state to help cover the cost of that purchase. Now, Ned Lamont, whose heart usually only bleeds for fellow CEOs and elites from the yacht clubs down in Greenwich where he's from, actually said no, because he is a fiscal conservative and a sincere one. It is one of his strengths. And he said, no, we're not going to use corporate welfare subsidizing this huge hospital chain to buy 3 more hospitals. Again, I don't think he necessarily should stop the merger. He's not going to. There's only one way to fix it, I believe, in the healthcare system in general. That's go to a single-payer healthcare system, Medicare for all, where we take out the incentives for private insurance companies to rip us off as the cost goes so high. There are other reasons the cost of healthcare goes high. But the profit built into the system, the incentives to rip us off, make healthcare unaffordable, and we could do patchworks like Obamacare, which is great. You know, it definitely covers some people, not usually with the greatest healthcare, and it's still taking a lot of money out of their hands. So until we can do what's just and right and makes by far the most sense, single-payer healthcare, we're going to have these imperfect solutions. But it doesn't mean we have to subsidize what are in fact huge, corporations making a lot of money, even if it's not to shareholders. And again, it's good. Hospitals are good things, right? We want healthcare. We're glad they're there. They give very good quality healthcare. I had an operation there. I'm very grateful for the care I got there. Don't think government has to pick on them or get in their way. But we don't have to give them $80 million to buy 3 more hospitals. Just my 2 cents rather than my $80 million. Also this week, another headline, Darnell Goldson is not running anymore for Board of Ed. He was the first elected Board of Ed member. He's been serving since the mid-aughts. And he's been the most interesting and colorful member. He asks the tough questions. He gets into controversies. He's independent of City Hall. And he pushes for transparency in an opaque board that doesn't understand the right of the public to know what's going on. So job well done. He wasn't going to win, I don't think, a 3rd term. Andrew Downer's running. She got the support of the party. I'm hoping she's going to be good too. She's a good person. A lot of good people on that board, public servants. Darnell Goldson played an important role there, the way he did as an alder before that. Long career in public service. Job well done. There was another headline about Darnell this week, hilarious story written by Laura Glesby, which is that he also got in fights with another board member, Ed Joyner. It was personal. Once they challenged themselves to a duel, cleared out a building, the cops came in, and they're always picking each other. And then this week, they found a reason to unite and get along, which is that the board, as they've done before, hired a consultant in how to get along. A get-along consultant, which, that's one of the most bogus professions there probably are. I know it's good. I'm not supposed to say that, but I think paying a lot of money for, teaching people to be grown-ups and get along, it's not a bad thing, but that's where our tax money went to. And Darnell Goldson and Ed Joyner usually fight. We're buddies. They got together and they said, we agree, way to go. And what they agreed on was what bullshit that consultant's work was and the stuff she was having them talk about. So they were best friends for a day. And Christine Ford, whose music we've been highlighting today, has a song called Best Friends. So we're going to dedicate it to outgoing Board of Ed member Darnell Goldson and his new BFF, fellow board member, Ed Joyner.
Sitting on my front porch, gear could tear it up like I did last year. Oh yeah, we're wasted in Las Vegas. We're best friends, chilling in the parking lot. Toyota with my box, and I wish you were around. Pick me up every time I'm down. Oh yeah, we're stoners, I've been over. We're best friends. Let's face it, ain't with no Beach Prize. You were free patient, and we're half patient. We're best friends. Chilling on the roof deck, trying to come up with it. The city looks perfect from up here. Yeah, we're in Brooklyn, taking other people's prescriptions. Oh yeah, I don't think we have a clue what we're doing. But let's talk about it out without you, cause we're best friends. Whatever you want, we're friends. We're best friends.
Best friends from Kristen Ford, like the BFFs of New Haven. On the Board of Education, Darnell Goldson and Ed Joyner. Read all about that in the New Haven Independent, story by Laura Gillespie. You listen to Headlines and Basslines, New Haven Independent, 103.5 FM. Well, what's in the headlines constantly, of course, and some of us doom scroll about, is the horrible violence taking place in the Middle East. It's so sad. I'm not going to talk about each side's argument for who's right and who's wrong. I have my feelings. We all have our feelings. New Haven is trying hard to express our outrage, our pain that different communities are feeling, to do it in public. We've succeeded in not having violence here. It hurts. This is painful stuff to talk about. I would argue that we are doing our best right now to cope with a situation that touches a lot of people personally, people they know, but also goes deep into our souls about who we are as human beings, who we are as part of the country with a role in that part of the world. It's tough for reporters. Tom Breen, the editor of The Independent, and the reporters have done such a great job of making sure everyone's heard in a robust comment section and coverage of the stories. And I think we just got to keep trying to hold on to our humanities when the time's toughest. And one thing, a point I like to keep making is not only not forgetting the people on all sides who are civilians caught in the crossfire, horrible deaths or kidnapping. Not only the soldiers, the people with the guns and the bombs on both sides, they're conscripted as well often, and they're lying, and they get killed. But also the people who survive. What happens next? What happens when the smoke clears? What happens when the bombs stop falling? What happens when the shooting stops? There are all sorts of political questions, again, interesting, important, hard to tease out. But there's also the individual human question. We learned that so much from the veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. As technology changed the game, changed the nature of warfare, so many people were sitting 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, just playing the equivalent of video games, as they would target people in another part of the world and have drones drop the bombs. And it destroyed their lives. It wasn't so easy. They weren't able to just go home and then move on. Witnessing, participating in warfare, in massacres, especially usually at the time you think you're caught up in a cause, and later it's easier to see both sides. It destroys people, destroys their lives. So I'd like to, there's a song about veterans of Iraq who came back to that life forever changed. Slade Cleaves wrote it. He's a singer-songwriter, has been around for quite a while. On his 2013 album, Still Fighting the War, The song is called Still Fighting the War, and that while our hearts go out every day to the thousands and thousands of people, millions of people whose lives have been upturned in the misery in the Middle East and the collateral feelings here, also thinking ahead to people are going to be living with the consequences in their own lives and their families' lives for decades to come.
Hard times coming home now. Can't get your feet on the ground. Got some issues and no one wants you around. Barely sleeping and you can't get through to the VA on the phone. No one's hiring and no one wants to give you a loan. And everyone else is carrying on just like they've always done before. You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war. Flashback to Fallujah, lost another best friend. 3 tours of duty and you're wondering when it's all gonna end. Bodies broken and bones shattered, blood and dust in your mouth. Getting weary but you're running with the few and the proud. Sometimes you wonder why you went, you never wonder what you stayed on for. You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war. Men go off to war for 100 reasons. Are they all come home with the same demons? Some you can keep at bay for a while, some will pin you to the floor. You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war. The bedspread is fraying, faded and tearing apart. 2 strangers holding each other in the dark. Tell me, what were you dreaming? How did you think it would end? How many heroes are scattered out into the wind? And all the happily ever afters turned to broken dishes and slamming doors. You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war.
You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war. Slade Cleave's still fighting the war. And indeed, after the shooting stops, after the smoke clears, this war now in the Middle East is going to be continuing in different forms and affecting our lives for a long time to come. And we're not going to deny it. It's so many of us are wrestling with the pain and the tragedy and the horrors occurring. Part of a conflict that has not gone away for so long. It isn't ending anytime soon. So we keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's not the only thing going on in the world. Our day-to-day lives matter. We have decisions every day and work to do and people to love and take care of, to laugh with, to cry with, and that matters too. While we're also holding in our hearts the heaviness and the horrors of unfolding in Israel and Palestine. All we can do is stick together, work toward a better world, one step at a time. I do think we can do it. Thanks for listening to Headlines and Basslines and WNHH-FM. Thanks to Harry Dross and Doreen for working the controls, fixing my mistakes. We're going to take it out with I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the Afro-Semitic Experience and their album A Plea for Peace. If ever there was a time for that plea, it is now. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day, all night, and all weekend long. WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.